Okay, so what do you think of Whangarei's current situation and what is holding it back? As in with the political, I suppose, landscape of what's going on at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Bradley, and thanks for having me on today. I think it's a wonderful thing you're doing, and for the community to get to understand and meet their politicians through this platform. It's full credit to you.
Awesome, thank you.
Look, I think Whangarei has so much potential. You know, we have so many unique attributes around Whangarei, and it's about making the most of the opportunities that we've got. You know, we've talked for a long time about the infrastructure needed for Whangarei. You know, whether it's the 4 lanes or whether it's the hospital build, whether it's bringing in the education hub into a thriving CBD. These are the things that have been getting momentum for a long time now and need to be delivered. We need to make sure that we can convert them from ideas into actual benefits for people in Whangarei.
Yep.
And look, we should acknowledge as well that while we're hearing in the green shoots, particularly in the dairy industry, particularly in the primary industries, there are people out there that are still struggling. So when we talk about being positive, we're not doing that because we don't understand or acknowledge those that we also need to help with housing solutions or education solutions or other social solutions. But I do think we have an opportunity and obligation to grow and be positive about how proud we are to be from Whangarei.
Yes, totally, yeah. I think it's one of those things you've got to increase you get more social help, assistance if you can grow the economy, to begin with, so yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so how effective is our current governing system at dealing with problems and creating change, moving things forwards? Because often here, from what I understand, there's a lot of things get held up in sort of the bureaucracy of the system. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
look, it's a really good question, Bradley. And look, we've got to sit back and analyse when we talk of something like Whangarei, this beautiful place. You know, you are talking about 3 governing bodies at the moment, right? You're talking about a Whangarei District Council that has a responsibility, a Northern Regional Council that has a responsibility, and a government that has a responsibility. And that may be why some people get frustrated in terms of where some of those things are caught out. Fundamentally, I think a good example to look at would be the hospital bill. A commitment in the last budget from this national government to just under $1 billion to be spent in Whangarei over the next 5 years. That's going to see things unlocked. That's going to see job creation. It's going to see economic growth. So while there may be some frustrations along the way, I think we shouldn't get distracted by all of that noise because there are some really cool things happening.
Yeah.
We just had the announcement of the extension of the highway to Tihana. Fully funded, the corridor's built. Yep, that's not all the way to Whangarei. Yes, we need to keep working on a solution to fully connect that up. But again, these things are coming through, and we need to keep that momentum going.
Is that $1 billion you're talking about, is that the special economic zone, or is that as a separate thing already?
No, just under $1 billion was the funding for the hospital.
Okay, yes.
So that's a separate project. The economic zone around the Marsden Point and the Marsden area as a whole, Northport as well. At the moment, that's at its early stages as a proposed, a campaign proposal from one of the parties. Ultimately, I think there's some more meat on the bones we can put around that and work collectively together to find an outcome. Again, looking at that investment into things like biofuels at Marsden Point, looking into the dry docks for Northport, looking into expanding some of those Northport
down there.
Yeah, so that we've got more bays to dock on and how we connect that up. So whether that's a special economic zone or whether that requires infrastructure to unlock it or whether that requires some sort of capital investment, that's to your point before, we need to work together with all those stakeholders to make that happen. Because that'd be just fantastic for Whangarei.
It would be, yeah.
It really would.
So, yeah. Well, just the more investment and jobs we can create up here, it's going to, Whangarei will be booming.
And investment and jobs aren't bad words, right? That gives our mokapuna, that gives our young Whangarei kids an opportunity to stay here and thrive. It gives them an opportunity to save money and buy a house. It gives them an opportunity to create their own community and give back. So, we can't look at these as being divisive. I think they're actually, as you mentioned, almost a critical part of a successful whangarei.
Absolutely, yeah. Totally agree. Okay, cool, thank you. And what are the most important changes you can see Whangarei needs, and what will you do about it?
Yeah, so I always struggle with this, what's the most important, because, they come a quite singular issue, so I don't want to dodge around the question, but it's hard to prioritise a single issue. Because as we've already said, there are a number of things that Whangarei does need continual investment, as well as new initiatives perhaps to grow. Now, if we can start, we've touched on the 4 lanes, we've touched on Marsden Point, we've touched on the education hub, and we've touched on the health build, the hospital build, right? So there's a lot of things going on. But I think something we need to look at in Whangarei is around our housing. I think that's a really important part of creating a safe and thriving society. As I mentioned before, to me, those community hubs start at home. They start with someone having home ownership or having a place they can call home, whether it's rented or purchased, or whether it's social or affordable. I think that's a secondary matter. But actually having the supply of stock is really important. And I think it's something that has been underinvested for a long time. This is not a criticism of any particular scheme or government or anything. It's actually just been an underinvestment for a long time.
Yeah.
We're in a planning environment at the moment where we seem to be getting some support coming through from Minister Bishop, RMA regulation, encouraging densities. We know that council are on board with looking at where these hubs are to get those that more intense development, and do it in a healthy way, a sustainable way, a warm way, so that these families can get together with a dry roof over their heads and, hey Bradley, pick up your bloody rubbish, mow your lawns. Let's be proud of our community, because when we do that, that pride then grows into the other things. We take pride in our work, and our kids turn up to school more often. So I'm not going to say there's a one answer to anything, but I am a firm believer that community, and particularly using housing as a base for that, is something really important for Whangarei right now.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And I think the RMA changes, reforms could, be a lot of good come out of that. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And if elected, what is the one thing you'd most want to achieve in your term?
Wow, it's another great question, isn't it? The one thing. So, look, again, for me, this is about Whangarei. So, there's no grandiose ideas on making national change or disrupting any systems. We have to be realistic about it. Whangarei is going to have a new Member of Parliament on the 7th of November.
Yep.
And whoever that is, I think has a real responsibility to Whangarei. We've got to make sure that Whangarei is top of the agenda. What does that mean? You've got to go to Wellington and learn. You've got to understand how Wellington works. You have to be very respectful of ministries. You've got to be very respectful of your colleagues in senior positions. And I think that gives me, or that incoming MP, a really good opportunity to focus on what is best for this place. So how I think I could hold my head high in 3 years' time would be saying, look at what we've achieved for our people. Look what we've achieved for Whangarei. We've been present in the community. We've been listening to our electorate, and we've been representing the people of Whangarei and Te Tautokerau, to Wellington with the highest degree possible.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. And so, what foundational changes do you think need to happen to help Whangarei adapt to the future?
Yeah, so look, when we talk about foundational changes, I think we can talk about infrastructure. And we've touched on a few of those initiatives to do with roading. And that connectivity piece for Auckland is not just about a quicker drive. It's actually about safety. It's actually about having our whānau that are on the road that aren't having to drive in difficult conditions and unsafe conditions. It's about an investment in Northland. By having those 4 lanes, it means that people will invest more here to bring their businesses, to bring their staff, to bring their products here, because they have a more reliable supply chain that isn't disrupted. So I think there's an infrastructure answer to that. I think secondly, there's probably a regulation answer to that. And we touched on the RMA, and that's not necessarily just for Whangarei, that's a benefit for all of New Zealand. But to have a planning system that encourages more productivity, where we get more value for that dollar spent, I think will be a really important part of the regulatory framework we need for Whangarei.
Yeah, totally.
And then thirdly, we need a vision. We need to have what do we stand for? I remember when we had a thriving marine industry here. We can all remember we had a thriving oil refinery here. We've had some unfortunate closures over the last 20, 30 years. Again, this is not pointing the finger at any particular person, that have seen some of those jobs lost. And we have a really low productivity rate from what is some incredible natural resource. We ship out milk solids, we ship out raw logs.
Yeah.
So what's our vision to maybe create jobs, create some value around that product before it leaves Whangarei? Before it gets shipped off on a boat, or before it gets sent down to Auckland or other jobs. So I think that productivity piece and having those jobs protected and that wealth creation would be something that we would need to make that step change.
Yep. Awesome, thank you. And okay, so AI is a major sort of talking point lately. It's coming pretty fast at us all. And so what do you think, or how will AI and this coming tech revolution affect Whangarei in the coming years?
Yeah. Look, AI at the moment is still very much in its infancy as a brand. What I think it's important that we should acknowledge is that the automation and the technology advances are something that are going to be constantly changing forever. I'm sure that there are accountants were worried when Microsoft Excel was released because they didn't need their pencils and abacuses anymore, right? So we evolve constantly and use and adapt to these technologies. We've looked at technology advances in the rural sector. For example, the likes of Halter with their AI collars, so they can program the cows on which way to go, tell them when it's time for milking, and move them into the right paddocks so they don't need to fence. So there's savings in infrastructure. So there is so much good that can come out of technological advancement, and we need to be aware of it. We need to embrace it. But ultimately, in terms of Whangarei, there's that opportunity to grab it. There's no difference for us that whether we're sitting here in a library now and we've got a conveyor belt behind us going, and you apologise if you can hear that noise from time to time. But again, you can imagine how if that could pick that book up, scan it in, and then replace it where it needs to go. We don't want that to replace the job of the librarians, but we want to upskill them so that they've got more time to spend engaging with their community, to point them in the right direction of the right book. What are you looking for today? How can I help you, sir or ma'am? And so I think we need to encourage AI. We shouldn't be afraid of it. But I also think that productivity and automation is something that's been going on since industrial revolution, and then we'll continue to see those changes coming through.
Yeah, and it does always worry people too when it comes, like you say, I thought the internet was gonna.
Internet was going to stop shops. Wasn't Amazon going to stop bookstores? It's library packed today. I'm not quite sure. I think some of that can be exaggerated at times. And look, I think fundamentally, Whangarei is a community of amazing people, and we want that connectivity. We want to connect with people, and I don't think any device or any technology is ever going to replace that ability to just catch up with someone and have that time together.
Yeah. Cool. And so, what do you think of the New Zealand situation politically, and how's New Zealand looking from a political standpoint at the moment, in your opinion?
Yeah, so again, a couple of answers in terms of how you look at politics versus policy. So I think politics, we're not faced with the same issues that are driving some of the outrage around the world. Just today, very, very sadly, we've all heard about the disruption in Ireland, and they've had a huge amount of problem with illegal immigration into Europe, and that's now starting to spill over into the streets, right? That's putting pressure on their healthcare, their education, their roads, their accommodation, their housing, all of that has been under serious pressure from illegal migration. And obviously then America has seen the same thing. So those geopolitical factors that are seeing big swings in people's views aren't so much impacting Whangarei or New Zealand for that matter. I think the stat that Seymour came out with was there's something like 22,000 overstayers. So yes, we've got to do something about it, but it's not, you're not getting, your kids not getting a spot in school, or you're not getting not treated at the hospital because of it. And that, that's a real issue facing the world. And that's seeing this real divide. And I think we should be really proud in New Zealand that we haven't got to that. We're drifting that way, and I think it's up to all of the political candidates to stand up and find areas you can agree. Find areas to work together. Find areas that actually there is common crossover for the benefit of all New Zealand.
Yeah.
Because if I think of what a House of Representatives is, or a Member of Parliament, and my job is actually to represent the people of Whangarei. That's not about representing this colour or that colour or something else. You're actually there to represent everybody. And I think we've got to stop using individual and often quite really singular or really micro issues as a point scoring, mudslinging, political gain thing. And New Zealand's not there, but we've got to make sure we keep that in check. We're all Kiwis, our number 8 mentality is still the best in the world, our innovation is still great. Surely we can find some common ground here for the benefit of Kiwis and not go down that American style of politics where it's just like, absolute hatred from left to right, and it's just, wild to think. Let's keep that out of here.
Identity politics.
Identity, exactly.
They're very splitting apart over there, aren't they?
Yes.
So, them versus us. So, is the current governing system effective at overcoming the problems we face?
By governing system, I assume you're referring to the MMP environment we're in, and is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and just is it enough to get enough sort of changes? I know the Nationals brought in the fast track and stuff like that to try and speed things through, but sometimes it's whatever one like you talked about the divisiveness between Democrats and Republicans. It's sort of one person does something, the next guy's come in and cancel it and whatever. So is the system working, do you think, well, or how do you see that as
so look, there's been a big debate about MMP, right? This is the first time there's been a three-party government. Obviously in 2017 when Winston Peters went with Jacinda and the Labour team, they had the Greens as supply and confidence, so there was kind of but this is the first true three-party government, and that's probably showing the maturity of MMP. It's 30 years now, right? 2026 is 30 years since it was introduced.
Yeah.
So this is our 10th election, this will be our 11th election actually, under that system. That does cause some of this swing, because some of those fringe parties can have so much influence on the government. So I think that is an issue that we need to, not an issue, that's the wrong word, it is something we need to understand when it comes time to the polling booths. And I think some education around what that system means is still lacking. The amount of people I talk to will say, hey, I'll give my party vote for National, but I'm going to give my electorate vote to Bradley because he's done some. It's like people still don't understand which vote is worth more and what actually matters come election day. So I do think we need some education on that. I also think, and it's very easy to go and throw mud and say you're doing this for your own benefit. I'm not, but I think a 4-year term would be really good. It's not about not being accountable. It's not about wanting a job for longer. It's none of that. It's actually that the political cycle gets condensed so much by the time you run an election, have your negotiations, start a government, and then by the time you then sort of that coalition starts to then go in their separate ways, whoever they are, to do their next round of campaigning, you're squeezing that down, aren't you, to probably a 2.5-year window. And I worry that's not enough time to embed some of these changes and see any benefits coming through which might relate in some of that swing this way, swing that way. Whereas if we let them bed in a little bit longer, perhaps we wouldn't just have to see that. Perhaps we would understand, hey, they're actually doing it for the right reasons. Hey, there is some benefits for us. Hey, this is a good thing. Let's keep moving forward together. That's kind of two different answers, but probably where I sit on the MMP and the term of government.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, interesting about the term too, but yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about because it is quite short, the 3 years, and then you're campaigning for a bit, got to come in and establish the new government. So,
but just so we're clear, I mean, all your listeners and watchers should just remember the most important thing is 2 ticks blue. Okay, so that's the most important thing. Then you don't have to worry too much. Just 2 ticks blue. Yeah.
So, what would make New Zealand better? What are the things you think New Zealand is crying out for at the moment?
Yeah, again, I think it comes back to productivity. And so I know that word can mean so much, but break it down to its simplest point. How do we create more wealth for Kiwis? How do we create more jobs for Kiwis? How do we create more innovations and products here at home and not be so reliant on the whole world? Look at what happened to our gas prices because we were reliant on a piece of a strait that can cut off our oil supply.
Yeah, we weren't reliant until a few years ago, but that's thing, I suppose.
A good example, right? A fantastic example, but that has to prompt our thinking to what else are we that reliant on that we're not making here. And it's not just about that reliance, but we're losing the skill set for it. There's particular companies that are currently undercutting New Zealand products through their own government subsidies, right? We keep buying them. That's forcing some of our Kiwi businesses essentially out of jobs, out of innovation, out of capital. And the moment they disappear, guess what's going to happen to the price of that material we're currently buying from offshore? It's going to double and triple and keep going, right? So look, I'm all for trade agreements. I'm all for a global economy, but what do we want to be known for creating here? We are world class at farming. We're world class with our forestry, our milk products, our sheep and beef. We have had a world class marine industry that's probably fallen off a bit since COVID because we haven't had that talent here. But where's that number 8 wire? Where's that next Peter Jackson, that next Zero, that next innovation that we can actually create the jobs here and the productivity and wealth for all New Zealanders to benefit from? That's what I want to see.
Awesome, yeah. That's great. And so do we need better leadership in New Zealand? Are we having a leadership crisis? Is that part of the issue?
Yeah. Look, I mean, in terms of our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Christopher Luxon, I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think what he has done in terms of bringing 3 parties together and showing a statesman style of leadership and maturity in that environment in Wellington, I think that leadership has been underrated by too many people, and he's doing a fantastic job. I think also when you talk about leadership, it shouldn't be one person's responsibility, right? You should actually have the leadership can exist at community level. I've met some fantastic people here in Whangarei that are leading initiatives for their community. So I don't think there's a shortage of leaders in New Zealand. I think the opportunity for more people to step up and to believe they can is something that sometimes lacks in our mindset, that tall poppy, or that if I put my head out there and I lead or I have an opinion, then someone's going to shoot me down.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe something that's lacking. That there's I meet some talented people every day right here in Whangarei. Oh no, I can't do that. I need to ask for permission, or I can't do that. No, you can. You can actually be that leader. You can lead your local community. You can lead that sports. You can start that initiative. You can clean up that street. You can clean up that beach. You don't have to wait for one person to make a decision that's going to impact you here at home. I mean, we're probably similar ages. I remember growing up. We had Cyclone Bowler out at Teal Bay, and in late 80s, it was at 90. I was sort of 8 or 9 years old at the time. We got out there and cleaned up. You know, like we're not sitting there waiting, oh geez, these roads are bad and just this climate's bad. We actually, as a community, got out there and did something about it. We got our hands dirty. We got the dads borrowed a tractor from a farm, or got on a spade, or got on a shovel, and actually made this stuff happen. And I just see that responsibility, that maybe as leaders, each one of us can step up and do something to help our community.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, leadership is everywhere, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so, what does it take to make progress in the system? Once again, back to the governance functioning. What does it take to drive progress and to progress things for Whangarei, especially like within that system?
Yeah,
once you get down to Wellington, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first and most important thing is to have an understanding of how it works. For anyone to sit in this seat and talk to you without being an MP in Wellington, you just got to go, hey, just tie over a second, eh? Let's make sure we understand the system. I've been working with a fantastic group here in the community. They're looking to get an investment for a conference centre here. So how do they actually access that money? Today I was with a small business in Waipu. How do they actually access the golden visa money so they get capital into their business? So firstly, you must understand.
Yeah.
Secondly, you need a clear and deliverable vision. Let's not go and say we're going to build a sky tower in Whangarei and complain that no one's supporting us. It's probably just not economically sustainable. So what is that clear vision? What is the purpose? What is the outcome? Where's the depth and the business case around these ideas and strategy to actually deliver a sustainable outcome? And then thirdly, where is the sustainable and ongoing management solutions to ensure they aren't ideas that become a white elephant or become a big spend but then have no follow through with it? And I think if you can understand, present a case and back it up with sustainable management, then we're going to unlock a lot more than what people think we are.
Yeah. That's cool. And so how does New Zealand and Whangarei adapt to, we've talked about it a bit already, but I'm a big believer that there's more of a financial crisis coming, and with debt, I think a lot of countries are running a high debt burden at the moment. Obviously seeing war and trade wars sort of break out around the world. So things are pretty tumultuous out there in the geopolitical scene, and so how's this going to affect us here in New Zealand and especially Whangarei?
Yeah. Well, Bradley, firstly, you're 100% right on debt. This government has inherited the worst books literally in the history of the country. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot to show for it. I think our interest bill this year alone is going to go close to $10 billion.
Yeah.
I just told you before, we're spending $1 billion on the Whangarei Hospital. We are throwing away 10 hospitals a year to repay debt from previous spending. And there was a lot of criticism around how untargeted and wasteful all of that spending was. You would have expected for a 60 billion lolly scramble from the previous government that we'd actually have more to show for it. Instead, we just had a record high inflation and debt. And so I think you're right. The first thing is we have to have sensible economic management. And I think Nicola Willis demonstrated that in her last budget. I think we have to also show, while fixing those basics, we're also building a future, right? You can't just say stop when it's not an austerity, because we are where we are. So we have to provide that vision forward. So, to answer your question, in terms of where do I see it going with debt, I am optimistic about the growth. Right now, particularly in the primary and rural sectors, we're getting record prices. The last dairy auction was at $10.40, $10.35. Like it's historically at a really high level, which is good for the economy. In Whangarei or Northland, rather than just Whangarei as the area, but in Northland, about 20% of our GDP comes from those primary sectors. So when they're doing well, they buy a car, they use the tradies, they recycle that money, they create jobs, they buy farming equipment. That really benefits something like Whangarei. $1 in every $5 coming from that. We have to protect that, man.
Yeah.
But we also have to be sensible. I think throwing around money. I saw a policy last night where we're going to give away money for public transport, and I think where's the benefit for Whangarei? 90% of all public transport spend is in Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch. So if we are going to spend money, how do we make sure it reaches Whangarei, and not just Whangarei, but the other regions around New Zealand, other than just the main centres that this policy announced last night?
Yeah. Super City gets pretty good, well looked after, But okay, and so what are your thoughts on so like the Muslim, like immigration, and this once again another thing that seems to be happening around the world, especially a lot in England, and as we talked about in Ireland, this Muslim and the Sharia law, people coming into countries but not exactly fitting into countries, if you know what I mean. So what's your sort of view on that and how to deal with it?
I think it's really important that a country retains its identity. I was fortunate enough to live in Dubai for a little while, part of my career overseas. And I learned so much about other cultures, but ultimately I respected what the rules were there, and that set the tone for the way you work, the way you behave, the way you interact with people. And I think we need to set those same expectations here in New Zealand. I know Erica Stanford, as Minister of Immigration, has spent a lot of time looking at those immigration standards and ensuring we don't have this laissez-faire approach that Labor had post-COVID that just opened the doors to anyone. No English tests, no values or cultures tests and things like that, which we're still dealing with, right? We're still dealing with that.
Yeah.
Specifically, to talk about our particular sect, a particular religion, a particular part of the world, I think it's irresponsible and it's playing a race-bait card that we don't need to play. I've worked in Syria, and I got to meet Sunni Muslims, Shiite Muslims. I got to meet various sects of Christianity. While in Dubai, we met a lot of people. A lot of Indians work there, and obviously we've got a free trade agreement with them. I think if we start kind of go, well, this is that, it becomes clickbait, it becomes race bait. It's irresponsible. The majority of people that I meet want to come here for a better life. They work hard. They want to give back, and they want to see growth for their family. And some of my best friends in the world may fall into those categories, but I call them Kiwis. They're my mates. And that's ultimately aligning to that, identity as a Kiwi.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you. And so, what are your thoughts on Maori and the the sort of co-governance and sort of just what are your thoughts on that? It seems to be like within the nation, it's always sort of been a bit of a talking point with us around Maori and how just the Maori issues and that sort of thing, and they seem to be the co-governance things and a few things up north, Far North District Council of our elected people getting not represented by the governments anymore. So what are your sort of thoughts on those issues and
so let's put aside where people come from or what their background, race, religion are in regards to that. Quite simply, National does not support co-governance. We've made that very, very clear. One vote, one person, one vote, and that is very, very clear. I think the obligations that we have as all New Zealanders under our treaty obligations need to be met and acknowledged. I, for one, would love to see a thriving Northland iwi economy like we've seen in Christchurch with Ngāi Tahu, like we've seen in Auckland with Ngāi Tahu, like we've seen through the Waikato, where these groups have invested in their local area. They've developed farms, they've developed equipment, they've developed manufacturing, they've created jobs, they've created housing, they've created healthcare programs that all people benefit from around them.
Yeah.
So I think it is really important that we separate the two things. because yeah, National have been very, very clear on our view that there is no such thing as co-governance, but we must understand and acknowledge obligations under a treaty. So I think hopefully that kind of gets that balance right in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's it. I think we do just, finding our balance with a lot of these issues.
They don't have to be extreme, right? They don't have to be just absolute extremists. And again, we talked about this before. That clickbait or that rage bait stuff. We don't need that. Ultimately, we're all in this together.
Absolutely, yeah.
We've only got one New Zealand, one Aotearoa, one Kiwi identity, and we all need to share and own it. And frankly, be proud of it. Be really proud. I'm proud. We don't seem to have any issues getting in behind our All Blacks or our some of our sporting teams.
Yeah.
Why not for the country as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so now, thank you for answering those, the more serious questions. Now we're into some personal questions, more about yourself, Lloyd. And so, yeah, please tell us just, like, who are you? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Probably should have started there, yeah. So I was born here in Whangarei Base Hospital. Grew up here with some really cool, local Northland values. We grew up over in Riverside, that had grandparents had a beach house out at a place called Teal Bay. This thing is, when I say beach house, it is the quintessential Kiwi batch. I think they paid £10,000 for it back when it was still in the imperial currency.
Right.
So, and my grandfather, Dr. Milton Walters, who it was his batch. He built the place with the rowing club. It was like a working bee because he was president of the Whangarei Rowing Club.
Okay,
So there's a huge amount of family history here. We grew up here. Mum and Dad were small business owners. Dad actually played rugby for North Auckland in the 80s, and that was quite a cool upbringing. Sort of back in the days when Okara Park, obviously before it was Seminoff Stadium.
Yeah.
When we'd see Okara Park packed out, you'd roll down the hill and you'd listen to Blue up there cheering and drink a raspberry lemonade in the car while Mum and Dad stayed behind for a drink. And I thought they were really fun times to grow up. I went to Whangarei Primary, Whangarei Intermediate, Whangarei Boys High. So just loved that sort of growing up here, and so many of my mates, as we all do, stay in touch with through those years. I did go away for a bit. I like a lot of Northlanders, you go away for that further your education, and that's something we want to address for Whangarei. But I ended up completing a degree down in Massey in Palmerston North. Before coming back up to Whangarei to buy a small business up here, the real estate game. So we had an office on Rathbone Street here. We employed about 40 odd people and had a really fun time. Being a part of the Chamber of Commerce and seeing the growth, giving scholarships to kids to try and help them get university education as well. So really enjoyed that sort of growing up. And after the GFC hit, it was tough. Being a small business owner was very difficult, and that was a tough time, not just for Whangarei, but for the world. And my business partner and I agreed to go separate ways. So that's what took me to Dubai, which I mentioned before. So I literally went to have a bit of a break because I started work for this company as soon as I'd left school, basically, to afford to be able to get an education. You work during the evenings and you study during the day just to get by.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't really feel I had that break, so I thought I'd take the opportunity and lo and behold, end up over there for a few years longer than what I thought I would be. But they were happy times. My wife and I got married while we were away. She's also a Whangarei girl from a dairy farm down the road in Mangapai. She was a Ruakaka lifeguard, so for us being back here and her brother and sister both live here, her dad lives there, it's been always been home for us while we were away. So it was great to get back after that stint in the Middle East. I learned so much over there about people. As I mentioned before, you got to deal with so many different cultures, so many different ways of thinking. Didn't matter what industry you were in, you were just in this melting pot of diversity, and I loved it because you sort of can grow up thinking about things in a certain way, but when you actually see all these different points of view, it can actually round out the way you think, and hopefully, as we talked about before, hopefully that makes you a better leader or a better understander of everybody, wherever you sit in it. I used to get in trouble because the tea boy would come in and serve us coffees in the meeting rooms, and I would get up and help pack up, and I'd get told off because you weren't allowed to do that. And I said, we're Kiwis, man. We don't care if you're the tea boy or the bloody Prime Minister. You're the same. You treat everyone the same. So you learned a lot over there, mate.
Yeah.
We came back home to Whangarei after that, and had the opportunity to take a job back with the real estate company I'd worked for. A fantastic family business. They've been around for 50 odd years. I've never met a more caring family in terms of job creation, in terms of what they've done and given back to communities. John Bailey was the chairman at the time. His nephew, Mike Bailey, is the chairman now, and that family would employ 2,500 people through New Zealand. It's a fantastic company. So to have the opportunity to learn from them, to be involved in a business like that, where we're able to give back to causes like Legacy, when it was fishing for the people, or being involved in education trust in terms of giving back to students coming through that couldn't get to university otherwise, to use that platform, that community reach that we had, to be engaged with our people was something I just thrived on. Absolutely loved it. But politics has always been on my heart. It's always been something I've made no secret of the fact this is something that I've always wanted to do. So when the opportunity arises every 3 years, like it does, every 3 years you have a look around and say, hey, is this the right time for me? Is this the right time for my family? And collectively we made that decision that actually, yes, it is. The kids are now, my daughter's almost starting high school, so she's like, yeah, dad. My son's a little bit younger. He's at intermediate school at the moment, just the first year of year 7. I was about to say Form 1, sorry. I was thinking, still my old school way, but year 7. So, still got a lot of time that I want to spend with my kids as they grow up, but at a time where they are 100% behind me. My wife's 100% behind me. My mum and my dad, my brother are 100% behind me. So that was sort of the stars aligning for 2026 to make that change.
Okay, yeah.
And really just want to give back. I mean, this place is home. This is Whangarei. Like, what better opportunity do you have? As I'm 43. I don't make any. No secret about that. But I'm at an age and stage of experience and energy where I think it's the perfect time to be able to give back and make a positive. What we've talked about. Actually have time to make sustained and positive change for Whangarei. I'm not doing it at the end of the career. I'm not doing it at a young stage. I'm doing this and making a very serious commitment for the next 15 whatever years because I care about this place.
Awesome, yeah, man. Good to see, and I think that pretty well answers how you've got into the politics game. So, what are your core values that you sort of stand behind?
Number one for me is family. Always has been family. I mentioned, mum and dad from here, in terms of what they taught me growing up, the support of Monica and her family around us. Everything we do is about that. And I think those family values are probably aligned to most of Whangarei and the way we think and act. And they flow on to community, they flow on to schooling, they flow on to accountability and responsibility. So to me, that's the bedrock. That's family.
Yeah, like the heart of it, awesome. And so, what's your opinion? What, in your opinion, makes a good leader?
I think honesty is the number one thing. I think for a leader to stand up and say what needs to be done opposed to what wants to be heard, if that makes sense. Yeah. I've had the luxury or the privilege to have a leadership role, and my previous role I was leading about 600 people, and there's just no way to hide in leadership. You can't afford to tell Bradley one thing and Susan something else and Shirley something different, because that's when your integrity and your leadership will get eroded away. Sometimes that means saying some uncomfortable things, some unpopular things. But if you lose that integrity, it's very difficult for people to get behind and follow you and what that vision is.
Yeah.
I also think another personal trait about my leadership style, it's not a V. There's not one person standing at the front with everyone behind them. For me, leadership is all about us all standing together. We always used to talk about that teamwork, and I touched on it before as well. There's not one person responsible. So when you are honest and you can have those tough conversations, I think that team all become leaders to deliver the same outcome.
Yep. Okay, cool. And yeah, that's a really good answer. And so what are your, do you have any religious beliefs, or what's your sort of opinion on God and that sort of, that?
I never grew up religious. I have a huge amount of respect for the values that religion brings to families and communities. I think it's really important, the values part of it. And as I said before, I had the chance to work in the Middle East, and I'll tell you a funny story. I was signing my first employment contract in Lebanon, hiring someone to work for us.
Yeah.
And then I got 10 days leave. I thought, this isn't fair. In New Zealand we get 20 days leave. And I kind of said to our HR team, I said, look, this is, what can we do about this? And they said, oh, Lloyd, in Lebanon, we acknowledge 17 major religions. And each of those 17 major religions has a public holiday. So the reason you get 10 days leave is because you get 17 days of, and then I looked back at New Zealand and thought, gee, we only get about 8 public holidays or something. So it kind of balanced out. So yeah, I think ultimately it comes back, as I say, it's about to work together in terms of group outcomes. It's about aligning values. It's, and we've discussed this before. Where you're from, we park all that at the door and say, well, what's best for our community in Whangarei to get those outcomes? And I think there's a huge amount of value alignment with families and religions and across a bunch of different sects that actually line up for a positive outcome.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think that's right, though, like they are, at the end of the day, it's all about values and things, the whole...
Yeah, really important values,
thing.
right?
Yeah. So what is your opinions on New Zealand's culture, and do you want to preserve it? Mainly thinking about, I've heard a statistic recently where apparently, it's where do you call immigration starting and stopping, but the typical Kiwi, as we've known it of the past, is sort of becoming, the minority amongst us living here in New Zealand. So yeah, I'm just curious to know.
Look, firstly, I can't kind of agree to that statement. I don't think the typical Kiwi is the minority. I mean, on our census stats, we do have other ethnicities coming through, but I still think there's a majority of typical Kiwis out there. I believe our identity needs to be protected. We need to evolve what that identity is over time. The identity of a New Zealander in the 60s or 70s probably wasn't the identity of a New Zealander in the 90s, which is probably not the identity of a New Zealander now. So I think, again, if we agree on the values, and we agree on what that is in terms of connected communities, I think that's what I think is important.
Yeah.
What's a typical Kiwi? Is it someone that loves to come and read books? Someone who's a world-class musician? Is it someone who represents their chosen sporting field at the highest level? Is it a doctor, or is it a teacher? I think there's so much that we can offer, and I just can't believe we've lost our New Zealand identity. I mean, anytime I travel, I got to confess, I wear a Wars jersey. I should be wearing an All Blacks jersey, but I actually love the Warriors. So anytime I've had the privilege to jump on an airplane in the last how many years, I've always worn a Warriors jersey. And it's amazing that New Zealand identity actually does follow you everywhere. So I don't think we've lost it. we're really special. There's 10 million of us in the world, out of the population that's exceeding 8 billion. Let's be really proud of that, but let's celebrate that we can be a librarian, a nurse, a musician, and share in those values.
Yeah, for sure. And so what is your advice, the final question too, by the way, but what is your advice for people that want to make a difference to the Whangarei community? 2
ticks blue. I thought if we were the final question, we're going to have a call to action at some point. Look, again, I'm probably going to repeat some of the things we've said, but ultimately it's about that kind of understanding. So if you've got to make a difference, what are you trying to make a difference for? How do you make a difference? There's no point coming to me to say your rubbish bins aren't collected enough, and there's no point going to see Mayor Cooper to say that you need some regulation change on the planning acts. So we need to actually understand where we're focusing that. We need to have that clear vision, and I think we need to use some initiatives. And number 8, why there's some incredible people out there that I see doing this. In the current framework, there's no issues for people, right? There's so many examples that up and down the district here in Whangarei of people that are out there smashing it. So, yeah, I'm not even sure what the question was now because I answered 2 ticks blue. But I think I think it's about if it's making a positive difference. Advice to people to make a positive difference to Whangarei is don't be afraid to make it happen. Don't be afraid to debate, discuss, have ideas, challenge ideas. But that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything, but we can find that common ground with some initiative. We'll get it done.
Yeah,
promise you.
Awesome, man. Yeah. No, I really appreciate that, Lloyd. Thanks for your time, and it's good getting to know you.
You too, man.
So